CLG looking a lot better. They pull off a 2-0 weekend, really huge for them. We will definitely be talking about CLG in a little bit. And this week, JT and I get into the most overrated and most underrated player in the LCS. I feel like it has been some time since we've talked about that. And also, at the start of the show, we have to get into Cloud9 versus TL. We highlighted this matchup last weekend, and of course, everyone did. This was the battle for first. So, J&T, let's get into it. Episode 77 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. J&T, tell me your thoughts. Cloud9 versus Team Liquid. Did it deliver? Did the game go as you expected? Give me your thoughts.
It was a weird game because going into the game, I expected Cloud9 to be the better team, and obviously, they came out on top of the win. But the game felt very back and forth, mainly because after the draft happened, I was like, okay, Cloud9's gonna lose this game. Like TL kind of has like the god draft into this Cloud9's draft, and from every other person, like live watching the game, reading through Twitter, like everyone thought that TL had the better draft. It's just more about them not making mistakes, um, rather than Cloud9 having to make plays because TL is usually a very mistake-free team, especially I would say whatever team Bjergsen's on. Like when I think of Bjergsen, I think of like minimal mistakes, and like that's something that he's always tried to be the best at, is not making mistakes and just being the more intelligent player. Um, but when the game actually happened, it was just a really weird game because TL took this really jank Rift Herald fight at
Mm-hmm.
like 8 minutes, or it was like 9 minutes into the game, where on paper it looked like a good fight for them because it was 5v4. They had Hans Sama roam up from the bot lane, but they engaged the fight first of all before he's even there. Second of
Yep.
all, they engage onto Tom Kench, the support, who can basically has 2 HP bars because he'll go down to like 100
Mm-hmm.
200 HP. He'll press E, he'll get the gray health, turn it into a shield, and then you got to kill him all over again. And then you just let this Tryndamere dive onto your backline with no resistance, and it was just like the one thing that TL could have done to screw the game up. They did, and they screwed the game up.
So I do agree with you that I did like TL's comp more. I think obviously the scaling was on their side, right? If that fight happens 20 minutes later into the game, it probably goes TL's way. But to play devil's advocate, I guess, we saw what C9's comp can do because who are you going to kill in that early fight? And I also need to give Cloud9 credit for taking that fight, saying this is a 4v5, but hey, we win this. Because, like you mentioned, Tom Kench does have 2 health bars. You can't kill him. Tryndamere can hit R. You can't kill him. Who else? Trundle can hit R. It's really hard to kill him. The only target that you could really go for is Victor there, and Tom Kench can devour him. So I actually really want to give a. I don't mind TL saying we have the numbers here. Our AD carry is rotating, theirs isn't. I could see the logic of why TL took that fight, but C9's logic is much better. Where they're going, it's 4v5, but this early we skirmish really really well, and you can't kill us, and that really swung it in their favor. So honestly, not a good fight to take from Team Liquid, but still pretty damn smart out of Cloud9 to go. Look, we're taking this 4v5 and we're going to smash them, and that's what they did, and that gave them a huge lead.
Yeah, it was. I think I do agree that on paper for both teams, it probably looked like a good fight. But on the TL side, like their prioritization was weird because they went for TK first, and he is the guy with 2 HP bars. But second, they also kind of forgot about the strengths of Cloud9 in that team fight because they had Santorin and Whippo dive onto the same target, being the Tom Kench, and then they forgot about Victor W. Like Fudge dropped Victor W onto the both of them. They got stunned, and like Santorin got like insta bursted down. And at the same time, while that fight was happening, where Tia was engaging on that bot side, you had Bjergsen and Core JJ up on the top river, like towards top lane, and they completely forgot about Tryndamere diving the back line because Tryndamere just dove right on top of Bjergsen, got him to flash out of the fight, chased him down, killed him, then he turned back, killed Core JJ. So, TL kind of got like lost in the sauce there with like, oh shit, 5v4, we win this. And then you kind of forgot how to team fight because they were probably getting like a little horny. Because I mean, they
And the
just
other
they just engaged. Like it wasn't like they set up and then engaged. Like they just engaged.
Yeah, both teams were ready to fight there. And the thing is, even though that looked like, oh shit, the game's over here, it should be done, it wasn't necessarily over there. And honestly, the Jax pick was pretty good into the Tryndamere. We saw even when the Jax fell behind, he could engage on Trynd and chunk him and force him to ulti before Jax was even at threat of dying. So it seemed to me like a really good counter pick, but maybe they played a little bit too quick. But the other thing is, Whippo just fucking ran it down on Jax. Like the game actually could have gone TL's way, but we saw Whippo's worst game of the season. And unfortunately, the worst game of the season for him came at a time that you're playing the best team that you could play against in this league. So that's pretty unlucky timing, I guess. But also, like, this is the time for you to step up, and he just didn't, unfortunately. Now, do I think like, oh, shit's all doomed now? Whippo's bad? No, of course not. Honestly, he's still in the MVP running, even though I think he definitely hurt his chances this weekend. He's still in the MVP running because it's one game, but that one game is people that will not leave people's minds when they're thinking about MVP voting. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go as far to say that that was like by far his worst performance. I think he had some bad moments in the game, but I think if you
Really?
take, I don't know, like he had two in moments. The one
Three. Sorry.
I can't think of what the third one would be off the top of my head, but I mean the glaring mistake was in the river when he jumped onto the control ward. You know, he plays a control ward in his river brush. He jumped over, tried to kill the Cloud9 one, and then just didn't use his flash, you know, when he got in trouble, when Victor W got placed right on top of him, and, you know,
Yeah.
Cloud9 basically took that kill, rolled it into it, then a kill topside into a Baron, into the game ending, you know, a minute and a half later, where Whippo kind of, I mean, I can see what he's going for there, trying to jump onto the Jinx mid lane, because the Jinx is completely alone. And if you're gonna, if you feel like you need to make that play to get yourself back into the game to slow Cloud9's tempo down with this Baron buff, because Cloud9's comp at that point is quite good with the Baron buff, with the strength of the Jinx, the Victor, the Tomkins, the Trundle in terms of sieging power. Like NTL's wave clear is really really bad that game, because they have a Jax top lane, and like that's not really a champion that wants to be grouping up 5v5 in sort of siege defense situations. I mean, I can see what he's going for. Like, I don't blame him for that. Sure, he messed it up. He missed his flash QE, the flash EQ timing. Like he was, you know, he was counter striking, went to Q flash onto him and messed it up. Like it happens. You mess it up. Um,
But
but
it's still costly, right? Like I
yeah,
understand that as well. Like, yeah, fuck ups happen all the time. There's some people that happen way more than others, but unfortunately, like that still cost them the game there.
yeah.
Or
But I mean,
that was one of the instances that cost them
I
the
think
game.
you can even compare it, you know, to their previous game as Cloud9. Like, you know, Bubba was losing lane in that game when they were playing the Aatrox v Gragas matchup. But his job is to just like not int as much as possible early game, and then he's going to be more useful in a late game. And
Hmm.
that was sort of the direction that this game was going with the Jax versus Tryndamere matchup, where yeah, of course,
Yep.
Summit was going to win the early game, but you saw even after Summit got that triple kill, that Rift Herald fight, Bubba was winning lane, like level 7 to level 10. Bubba was winning lane. He was winning trades. He had the pressure. He was the one who was able to dictate the pace of that lane. And then, you know, once again, like just his simple mistake pretty much ruined the whole game for TL. So I wouldn't really call it a bad game out of Whippo. I just think he had two really bad moments, which ended up
Really.
screwing up the game. And, you know, one bad moment doesn't mean a terrible game.
I don't know. To me, yeah, for me, it's definitely a bad game in my opinion. But we'll just have to agree to disagree on that. The other thing that I'll say about this game is, even though the start was very back and forth because there were both teams making plays for the first, I don't know, 15 minutes, we'll say. I'm just guesstimating there. The end sucked because there was no big team fight. Like I would have said, this game was so hype if we had the back and forth, even with the ints. If the game didn't just suddenly end off of those ints, that was another thing that I thought really sucked. Was it was like this matchup that we hyped up all week long. The desk hyped it up, and everyone was ready for what are these late game team fights going to look like, and it didn't really happen. It just you had a couple people overstep and die, and next thing you know, the Baron buff was just sieging down mid with like Tryndamere and Jinx, and like, well, okay, well those towers are freaking gone. Bjergsen had his base stopped by I think it was Trundle, and that was the game, and it was over. So like, really shit way for that game to end. That was one of the more bean soup moments of the weekend, I think.
Yeah, and I think, you know, to me, this game is more on, like, I mean, again, I'll throw it back to the previous version of Cloud9 versus Team Liquid. It felt like Cloud9 in that first matchup, Cloud9 lost the game rather than TL won the game. And I think in this game, it's the exact opposite. Like, TL lost the game rather than Cloud9 winning the game just because of the mistakes they were making, and they're sort of, they didn't really recognize like what they needed to do with their comp. Like you could see even after Cloud9 got that early Herald fight, they swung up to like a 3K gold lead or a 3.5K gold lead, and you could slowly see over the next 10 minutes like TL I think brought it to a gold advantage in their favor before the game devolved into shit after Bippo inting and then Cena getting Baron. And you could see pretty much that entire, you know, that 10-minute period of the game where you could see that Cloud9's champions, they couldn't do anything to TL in not a 5v5 scenario. Like you would see Trundle trying to go after Zeri in a side lane to try to like help a gank. You would see, Tryndamere try to jump on Ryze in a side lane, like he couldn't jump on him, and he was getting like blown up for half his HP. Whipple was winning the side lane against Tryndamere, so you could tell like Cloud9 was losing the side lane, and they couldn't engage because their comp didn't have any engage, and it was just more TL making the mistake of coming into them or just like failing to use their fingers. So it's for
Yeah.
me like looking at this game, it was obviously like a number one, it was a who's the best team in the league kind of game, but we didn't get that sort of satisfaction from it because it was so mistake filled.
I agree. I definitely agree, and that's I think what sucks. Fortunately, most people have these teams both going to the finals and or at the midseason. What is it? Midseason
I
showdown? What
don't
they're
do they still
calling it?
call it that? I don't think they call it
I
that
don't
anymore.
fucking no. I thought they do.
I
I
thought I
thought they do
remember
because
hearing
I
somebody say
recently
that they're
looked.
not.
So maybe someone can maybe fact check me on that. I thought I recently looked up the dates of it. It's like April 23rd and 24th. I thought I said midseason showdown. So regardless, we all know what I'm talking about. Spring finals, and hopefully we get to see them at least face each other. They should at least face each other in playoffs at some point. It'll be pretty sad if they don't. But anyways, from apart from that, from the rest of the weekend, any other thoughts on these teams on Cloud9 versus Immortals? We could talk. We could talk about how Summit just totally disrespected the Tryndamere from the side of Revenge, and it didn't matter. You could see why he disrespected it.
Yeah, I mean, Summit is just like such a good laner. Like he feels like the Alfari, like what Alfari was doing in the spring split of 2021 is what Summit's doing right now. Like he wins every single lane, up 20 to 30 CS every single lane with zero jungle intervention. You don't even need to send. Blabber doesn't even need to go top lane, and like Summit just like evades every gank. Like I don't know if it was that game or if it was the game against TL where Summit is just like playing up in his face, wards correctly at around the 3-minute mark, sees the jungler coming up on that top board and just backs off. And then when the jungler leaves, he just goes right back to bullying. Like,
He does absorb a lot of pressure.
yeah.
That is absolutely true, and we saw him just completely shit on Revenge of Tryndamere. I guess we'll save a little bit more of that for when we talk about Immortals. The other guy to highlight from Cloud9 specifically was Blabber. His Diana against Immortals was pretty sweet. He had the nice flash 3-man ulti, which that team fight pretty much just closed out the game as if they weren't already owning already. That just kind of stamped the final bit of that. Blabber once again still popping off, and I wonder if maybe at this point it's between those two for MVP. I don't know. Like the MVP talks are swaying a little bit more towards Summit, I would say. But I think Blabber's close behind. But anyways, those two guys are absolute beasts, and it's good. It's nice to have two, maybe three, if you want to throw Berserker in, players on your team that could all be considered for MVP. That's a pretty good sign.
Yeah, I think most people are kind of under the impression that Summit is the front runner, and I would tend to agree. I think I personally see it a lot closer than others do. I do think that Blabber is just like getting a little bit overshadowed just by how hard Summit is winning lane.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
more it's people are more looking at it from the opinion like, well, of course Blabber is like doing well. He doesn't even have to worry about topside. But like it does feel like Blabber's kind of work, like what he's doing in game is getting, is flying under the radar because of how dominant Summit is in the top lane. Like you look at that Cloud9 Immortals game, like sure Summit was winning, but like Cloud9 was losing the rest of the map. Like Fudge had died 3 times in a row to Ahri. Was kind of disrespecting that whole game. Not using his dash to evade charms in the lane phase, not taking cleanse against Ahri Thresh. Like I feel like that should be a pretty easy, just like you take cleanse so you can play aggressive in the lane and in team fights. And Fudge like had a pretty like non-impact that game. But I don't know, like Blabber's team fighting on Diana was just so good. Like that angle that he found in that river fight where he baited out Charm with the Zanyas and then proto belted the hook out of Zanyas to then insta re-engage the fight, and then the game was over from there after that.
yeah. He's got a good eye for engaging fights. He's got that.
Yeah, I mean the main thing that I took away from this week, because I was always gonna think that Summit was gonna win lane, whether it was against Revenge or Whippo, because I think Summit's the best laner. But I felt like Winsome had like a really good weekend. Like sure he was on Tahm Kench UD, but he was doing exactly what you need to do on Tahm Kench. He was going up to the fights where you need to be. He did have that one sort of oopsie moment where he like ate the wrong target after Fudge. It was like just getting picked over the wall in mid lane, and then he kind of like came in a second late and accidentally ate Blabber instead of eating Fudge like as he was dying. But I thought Winsome, like this was the first weekend that I saw. I was like, okay, Winsome is doing everything he needs to do, and he's doing it everything correctly. So like
Just a couple
Cloud9
more.
is just rolling right now. Like they're looking really good.
Yeah, just a couple more things for me to add on the TL side of things against EG. One, Hansama was playing like the most aggro Ezreal I've ever seen. He was eing forward a lot, which you got to give credit to when it's popping off. But he also did get picked the one time by Inspired, so just a little bit of an oopsie there. And on that same note, in that same play that he gets picked, this is the second time that I noticed TL sieging top lane tier two, and they for some reason don't have a ward in like that little area like in between the tier 2 tower and in between like wolves, that one little lane there. They don't have any vision there, and it allows them to get, well, to get picked off, and they kind of throw the game. That's the second time we've seen that this year, so that was something else that stood out to me. I was like, dude, like, get wards down when you're sieging a tower. That's pretty common. So that was the other thing that I'm like, I expect a little bit better out of TL. Yeah, I guess a few weeks ago, I think we both would have said TL. Well, I think we did both say TL, if I remember right. Say TL was far and away the best team in the league. I guess our minds have been changed on that one, wouldn't you say?
I didn't say that.
Yes,
Not
you
to,
did. I think you did. I'm gonna
that
find
I
it.
said that they were far and away the best team.
Yeah, I think so.
I
I'm
did
gonna
not.
find it.
I did not say that. I might have said that at any other point, but when Cloud9 and TL were 9-2, when we did our which teams are better or worse than their record.
I'm gonna go look, and if
Okay.
I'm wrong, I will let you know if I'm wrong. I will let you know if I'm right. But well, anyways, anything else on C9TL, or should we move on?
Um, I don't know. That TL EG game was just a weird game because EG kind of just picked three losing lanes and just like rolled over and did nothing up until where, credits Inspired found that angle where he did get the ward hop kick flash onto Han Sama. They turned the fight. It was like a 4-for-0 fight, and EG took Baron at like 20 minutes. But other than that, it was just like we picked three losing lanes. I mean, Rise versus Galio like doesn't like a losing lane per se, but like Galio is the way more impactful champion pre like 13 minutes. Also, never mind. I do have something to say. Tank Rise is becoming like my new, like, what the fuck is this? I think Tank Rise is so useless. I think it is so useless. I don't understand why people pick it and why people are building like with Tank Rise. Like, it doesn't do any damage. Like, I can understand if you want a more like conservative control mage that has a lot of utility and reliability in team fighting. But when you're like picking Rise to be the quote unquote AP carry, like that's your sole AP threat in a team comp, like I think it just fucking blows. It does like I'm watching Rises do like 400 damage a Q, like level 16. Like AP Rise hits like like over 1,000 damage post 616. Like sure, like it's not the same build. It's the champion sort of accomplishes two different things, but it just feels super useless. Like I fucking hate this Tank Rise shit. It's becoming my new it's becoming my new like set jungle thing. By the way, what the fuck? Immortals picked set jungle this week. Like miss me with that.
Okay. Let's slow down on the tangents here. I think we all know what JNT's Bean Soup Award is going to this week.
A
He
Tank
does
Rise
not
fucking
like the
blows.
take rise. I don't hate it like you do. I honestly, I have to agree. I would like to see the damage rise, but I think that's more of just like a, I want to see some guy do some fucking damage than it is. I don't think it's good. I think it's just not as fun to watch. From my point of view, I don't really hate the tank rise. It seems okay. You also have to remember that rise is pretty short range and is kind of in there. I guess he runs phase rush, so he's got some mobility there, but meh. Let's talk about 100 Thieves. They had a 2-0 weekend. Uh, Maybe a 2-0 weekend is like not telling the whole story, considering they were down 10k or 11k against Golden Guardians. But I thought they looked pretty good against FlyQuest at least.
Yeah, it was a weird 2-0. Like when you think of 2-0, you think of, "Oh my god, 2-0, like what a great weekend." And it did not feel like that for me. Like and I think that Golden Guardians game kind of sticks out like a sore thumb mainly because that game was just like a pile of shit from both teams. Like it was one of those games like where neither team I felt deserved to win at the end of the day because both teams were
Yeah,
making like so many mistakes on repeat. But like 100 Thieves just had like the consistency of Victor Jinx, and that's the reason why they won.
yeah. We saw.
Another shit Tank Rise game, by the way.
I gotta give a little bit of criticism to FBI again. I mentioned last week how I want to see him improve in his positioning in team fights. That's like the most important thing as an AD carry, and he walked right into a Gnar that hadn't used anything yet, just got slammed into a wall in one shot. And I'm like, huh. I know you want to be useful. I know, like, I get you want to play not scared and you want to put out some damage, but sometimes you got to respect the Gnar that's right in your face and not walk right into him. And he did and died. And so I was like, okay, well, there's another example of FBI not really looking like himself. So there's that. I will say, in the FlyQuest game, Abadage had a great game. Now, yes, it's one game, but Abadage had like I think it was three-man Vex ultis in that game, and all of those team fights were won off the back of the Vex sphere. So I actually have to say Abadage popping off for once. We have not seen a lot of that. You and I have been very vocal about how bad he has been this year, and that was refreshing. Even though it's one game, I'm not ready to give him the MVP award here. But my God, did 100 Thieves fans need to see that? So that was pretty good, and that was one thing I got to give Abadage the shout out for because we've been very critical of him.
Yeah, like once again, I would also say this was kind of a weird game, 100 Thieves versus FlyQuest, mainly because like it was just such a slow and controlled game out of both teams, and
Hmm.
it was just a weird situation because I think both teams probably thought that like they had the better scaling because like you go to the FlyQuest side, like they have Viego, Scion, and Zeri, like three just kind of like monstrosities in these late game team fights, and they had the sort of the big utility out of Nautilus Ari to sort of control the mid game and just basically say like, okay, well you can't really engage on us because we have Nautilus and we have Ari, but also we can like there's a threat of us engaging on you, so like you guys can't even step up. And same thing on 100 Thieves, like they have the Jinx pick, they have Aatrox. I did sort of think that like FlyQuest was gonna end up winning the game because I did think that FlyQuest had the better comp, like kind of post 20 minutes, but you were right. I think Abadage just had a really good Vex that game. He had multiple, big ults onto the backline into 3-man fears, and that was kind of the reason why they won the game. Is just like Abadage had those more big impact moments to kind of determine the outcome of the game, and FlyQuest just didn't really do too much. Like he just didn't really do anything.
Yeah, no, I agree. FlyQuest did look a little bit lackluster. We'll get to them in a little bit. Um, 100 Thieves. What else? I don't honestly have much else to say. The only thing that I was a little bit disappointed in was that they picked, I think it was the Scion into the Gnar with against Golden Guardians. That was one thing where it was like, okay, great. Licorice is get looking good and winning lane and all, but also like 100 Thieves someday has been an absolute monster on pretty much any carry that you give him this year. Why are you putting him in a losing matchup? He's been one of the only guys, one of the few guys. It's pretty much been him and Closer that are the reason you've won some of your games. So that was kind of a head scratcher to me, and that was the only other thing that I could think of that stood out this weekend. Aside from Abadage looking good in the one game, was like, why did you draft that, and why are you putting Someday into this losing matchup when he's been your guy this year?
Yeah, I mean, despite him having the losing matchup, I still thought he had a good weekend. His Aatrox game against FlyQuest was really good.
Hmm.
He did his job as Scion in the game against Golden Guardians. So I don't know. Didn't look pretty some days game against Golden Guardians, but I thought he had a good weekend.
Yeah, it's hard to talk about a team that was down 11K. I mean, look, we've said it a million times. Golden Guardians has a nice early game, but they throw it a lot, and that was one of those. So it's like it's hard to give credit for the 2-0 when it was like, eh. I didn't really think particularly either team that they played against this weekend looked that great. And so that's why I'm not super excited for 100 Thieves, but it is a 2-0 and they kind of need that. So good for them. Let's move on to Dignitas then. Dignitas, did they have a 2-0 weekend as well?
Yep.
I think Biofrost is amazing. There, I'll keep saying that. You put him on Thresh, you put him on Lux. He's an absolute beast. I think he's the best player on his team. I know you think it's well. I know you last week or 2 weeks ago you said it was River. Have you changed your stance on that, or are you still sticking with River?
No, I don't think I've changed.
Hmm.
I just think
I,
this whole
I
situation's a bit funny because you were the one who was like, Biofrost is going to be one of the worst
I
players
know,
on
I
this
know.
team.
But you know what though? I've also said for the last month that like, look, this guy's actually been a beast, and I admitted I was wrong. I did think he would be bad because he wasn't that great when when we last saw him on TSM, and then he took a year off. I'm not expecting him to come back and look this good. He is their best player, so you got to give credit where it's due. I think he's been an absolute beast. Um, he was pretty much the reason why they end up winning that game against TSM. I think he hits the binding on tactical. You could argue all day tactical shouldn't be standing up like that at turret, but it's still it's a Biofrost binding that catches them off, and then they win that team fight and they end up winning the game. So that's just to me another game where it's like, holy crap, how many wins is Bio going to steal for Dignitas? It's pretty much him and River kind of carrying this team, to be honest. We talk all the time about how Fake God's kind of dead weight in the top lane. I don't think that's really changed, and so if this team can rely on Biofrost and River to win games, great, they'll win games. But if it's not those two, they're in kind of deep trouble, and that's kind of they kind of sit at the even record.
Yeah. I remember. Oh, I guess it would have been 2 weeks ago now when we were doing our. Oh, maybe it was 3 weeks. Whatever. It was whenever we were doing our midseason power rankings. I basically said that like Dignitas was the bar, and I think they're maybe raising that bar a little bit
Yeah,
because
they are.
part of it it's a little bit weird though because for whatever reason TSM decided to give Dignitas their three comfort champions on 1, 2, 3 when Dig is on red side. And as the team on red side, you should be normally the ones that are more inclined to ban the OP stuff, whereas the teams on blue side can sort of have a little bit more freedom in terms of what they want to ban, whether they want to target sort of, favorite champions, I guess you could say, from the enemy team, or, look a little bit deeper into that. But it was just really weird to see that TSM gave over, the Jarvan, the Caitlyn, and the Lux because, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I feel like whenever Dig has gotten Jarvan, Kate, Lux, like I think they're like 3-0 or something or 4-0.
It's no secret, and
Like,
don't even take this as a flex. But I literally said as we're watching the game in Discord, I'm like, so they're gonna play Jarvan, Lux, and Caitlyn. I'm not even proud of predicting that. Everyone knows this, except TSM. I don't know. To be fair, TSM could have won that game though, so I guess maybe they knew what they were doing playing into it. I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know, man. The
it's
other thing
weird.
I'll say too is that blue on a collie, that was a pretty nice outplay on takeover. That play was kind of sick. That was pretty much the highlight of the weekend for Dignitas. That play was nice.
hmm Um, yeah, they kind of like shit stomped Immortals. Like that game, like wasn't even close.
Hmm.
I mean, Revenge had again. I don't even know if I would call it a decent game on Irelia. He did well in the side lane, but other than that, he did get a lead in lane and didn't do too much with it. Died like 3 times in a row, and then just kind of ended up like picking up some kills here and there at the end. But for the most part, like Dig stomped Immortals like top to bot.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I agree. I think we'll talk about them during the Immortals thing. I guess I got a lot of flame coming Immortals way, but we'll get to them in a little bit. Should we move on to FlyQuest?
Sure.
I thought FlyQuest looked like shit this weekend. I'll just come out and say it. This team is so unpredictable, man. From week to week, I can't put my finger on this team. Uh, Even Afro, who I say is like probably their best player, maybe second best. I don't know Jose, but Afro I didn't think looked good this weekend. I thought Johnson absolutely ran it down in both games. He looked pretty useless on the Zeri. Uh, I don't know what Kumo played Tryndamere the one game. He didn't really do anything. Not that I expected him to do much, honestly, but nothing really happened this weekend. The only guy that I thought stand out looking good for FlyQuest was Jose Diodo in the Viego game. He was the only one finding picks against 100 Thieves, and that was about it that came out of this weekend.
It's felt like FlyQuest has kind of like lost their spice. Like it feels like they've kind of reverted back to just playing standard against every other team, and they're clearly not as good as the top teams. And I think one of the reasons why FlyQuest in the beginning of the split was doing so well was because they were playing these somewhat off meta team comps and off meta picks that were allowing them to find some success. Like they were the early adapters on Veigar mid. Jose Diodo was like one of the first people to bring back Hecarim. Kind of like we didn't really see much Hecarim Udyr this past weekend, but like 3 weeks ago, like for the last 3 weeks, not including this past one, like he was playing a lot of Hecarim Udyr, and like people had started like picking that up again. So it just FlyQuest is kind of like reverted back to just playing standard versus everybody, and it's clear that they're just not as good. So it's like, I mean, does that signal that FlyQuest is just a bad team? Like, I guess so. Like, do they need these picks to sort of win games? And I hope that's not the case because I think, from what we've seen from FlyQuest so far, so they can be a good team, but it's just feels like they're only a good team when they got some secret sauce, and when they don't, they're bad.
They do feel like a very inconsistent team. That's one of the things I'll say about FlyQuest because there has been weekends where they've looked amazing, and then there's weekends where they just come out and put a huge dud out there, and that's kind of what we saw. The other thing on FlyQuest is against that game against CLG, they put 0 wards down in the early game, which I just think is so incredibly important. to track the enemy jungler. They don't put any wards down, and then finally they do as they're shoving up bot lane. They put a ward just like right in river, but like that's not a deep enough ward when you're playing against a Nautilus that could just flash auto on top of you and then hook and then chain CC. Like that is a long chain CC or CC chain rather when you have the jungler coming to gank as well. And so obviously they died to the bot lane. And I was just like, dude, that sucks. You had no one check where contracts was starting, no wards whatsoever. And then of course you died to a gank. He ran right through the ward. It didn't matter because they just didn't even they weren't ready for the gank. And so I was like, you're not even ready to go from level 1. Like most teams will get wards down level 1 somewhere. They did nothing. That's like that should not be happening in the LCS, man.
Yeah, they just I don't know. FlyQuest is just they lost their mojo.
Yeah. Okay. Next up is Evil Geniuses. Evil Geniuses, how did they do this week? 1-1, but their one loss was to TL,
TL.
correct?
Yep.
Yeah. They pretty much got outplayed most of that game. Like you mentioned earlier, you didn't really like the draft and that they were just kind of going to lose their lanes, and that's kind of how it went. Um, I partially agree with that, but I also like you lost lane to Core JJ and to Hans Sama. Like, it's happened before. And they also traded back one kill to their credit as well. But honestly, there was a really significant bot gap when you think about the goal differential. I don't remember what the time was in the game, but there was a like a 2K gold lead, and it wasn't very late into the game. It was maybe 15 minutes. I don't know. Pretty significant. Just well, you got Core JJ and Hans Sama, so it's like, well, seen that before.
Yeah, like I kind of touched on it a little bit already, but it did feel like in that TSM game, it was either because they had 3 losing lanes or they just chose to not really do too much in the early game. And other than the one play that they found where they got the nice kick flash into a Baron, you really could not stop like the TL war machine of Whippo smashing lane on Lucian, on some Encore smashing lane with Ezreal Karma, and Santorin just getting almost every single dragon.
There was a couple of so even though it's only a 1-1 weekend, to me it did feel like a pretty good 1-1. Inspired, obviously we mentioned his Lee Sin kick, and that was really nice. But also his Hecarim game was pretty much just took over the game there as well with the Hecarim. He had the nice, I don't know if it was like 3 or 4 man ulti. I don't know. There was 4 of them that was grouped. I don't know how many of them got feared, but he had the nice ulti into them as well. Pretty much just won that team fight. He was ganking a bunch of lanes. And yes, it's TSM, but you know what? He completely took over that game, so you got to give credit there. And the other thing is, I actually thought Jojo Pyun had a really good weekend too. We always talk about his ability to lane well, and his laning phase is fine, but then later on he dies. Didn't see a lot of that this weekend. He was not a liability in the mid to late game or whatever. Yeah, pretty much mid to late game, like we've seen a few times this year. And so I actually thought Jojo had a really good weekend. So kind of big shout out to him.
Yeah, he had a much more controlled week this week where we
Yeah.
didn't see a whole lot of like early randomness towards the mid lane, both from his own team and the enemy team. Like it just kind of feels like if Jojo Pyun isn't making mistakes, then he's going to be really good and he's going to scale up really well because apart from sometimes he's playing a little bit too cocky in lane, like he farms well, he positions well, for the most part. That is in the mid and late game, not as much in the early game. And, he's going to pump out the damage if you're giving him just like a straight up control mage. So, feels like against EG, you got to sort of create some chaos in the early game to sort of stop them. And TSM
Yeah.
did none of that.
And also, Danny absolutely popped off in the TSM game, so credit to him. But I also got to give a lot of credit to Vulcan. I thought his Nautilus was really good that game as well. So that's one where you're like, well, I know Danny's getting all the kills, but that's one where you got to look at the support. I mean, the jungle as well. I thought Danny played well, but I really thought he was set up really nice that game. And so you got to give credit pretty much to the whole team on that one. I think they pretty much outplayed TSM just about everywhere for the most part, if I remember correctly. And so that's something that EG is going to need to do more often. I think fans would like to see it a little bit more often out of EG, but eh, I to me, I think it's good that if you start to hit your stride around mid to late season of the first split, that's okay. So pretty good out of EG. I think they're starting to look a little bit better, and I think most of the league expects this team to be a little bit better as well. You hear a lot of interviews where teams continue to put EG up there as like other teams to watch out for. I'm not going to say we've seen it yet at the LCS level. We may have seen it, or they may have seen it during scrims. I don't think we've seen it that much yet. But this was a pretty good sign of the game against TSM. Maybe we start to see it a little bit more. Hope so, anyway.
Hmm. Alrighty. The talk of the town this week was obviously CLG with the big 2-0.
CLG gets a 2-0. I didn't see it coming. Um, okay. I'm gonna get my Debbie Downer stuff out of the way first because I think this is like a really good, like feels good story here. Look, I don't think CLG is that good of a team still. I can't pretend that they are. I think that Johnson absolutely ran it down against them. Who else did they? Yeah, the Golden Guardians bot lane, they go for the 2v2 and then the Zeri just dies randomly. Like I don't know what the hell that is supposed to be. However, you give CLG credit for punishing the mistakes of the other team, and their bot lane did that. The other guy who we always criticize on this show, Contracts, had a pretty good weekend. Look, he gets ahead, and I even say every time he has a shutdown on his head, he's going to give it away, and he did still do that. But he was a lot more reliable in his ganks this weekend, and a lot less ints than we've seen in weekends past. And so, definitely a huge improvement for Contracts, even if it wasn't a perfect weekend. Definitely a better showing. So a good sign for CLG, and yeah, they pick up a 2-0, which is really important considering I think next weekend they play C9 and TL.
Yeah, it didn't, what am I trying to say? Like, it didn't feel like it was anything special out of CLG. It was just like, okay, we have some consistency in top and mid with them not just like getting smashed in lane.
Hmm.
Contracts actually had a normal game where he's not like dying all the time, and their bot lane continues to be like the strong point of this team. Like Luger and Poom had
Yep.
a really good weekend. Like I thought they, in terms of like bot lane impact and like who had the best performance, I thought CLG's bot lane like had the best performance this weekend in terms of
Yeah.
their impact on the game, and feels like feels like this is like a good situation for CLG to be in going forward. Yes, obviously, you just mentioned like if they play C9TL next week, they're probably going to lose both of those games. But
Yep.
with if we're going to assume they're going 0-2, like you got 3 games left, and you're still tied for seventh right now. So like you maybe win like 2 out of those 3 games in that last super weekend. Like, dude, CLG could maybe be in playoffs somehow.
Yeah,
So
that's what's craziest to me. Like they're 5-8, like not an amazing record, but definitely better than I would have given them credit for. And the fact that they're in playoff conversation, we're in what, week 5 of LCS now, or what
it
what
was
what are we
week
going
6.
into?
Oh,
This
next
was
week is
week
week.
6.
Next week is week 7.
So we're going into 7. Okay. Like that is really really good. Don't ask me how he got here, but that is really really good. And the other thing too is even though like Kaisa Nautilus is a classic, right? We saw them play that I think it was both games this weekend, right? They looked good on the Kaisa Nautilus. Luger landing all of the W's in the world, absolutely poking out who are they playing when they just kept poking them out? I would think that was Golden Guardians because I remember Licorice eating like 10 Kaisa W's in a row. So really good out of Luger landing all of those. He did use his killer instinct and opportunities that were given to him, we'll say. Johnson deciding to take a 1v1 made no sense, but hey, he punished it. And Poom, I actually thought a lot of foresight out of Poom this weekend, whereas like he's getting into the brush ready for the other team to rotate through, and him punishing that rotation was something we saw that was really good out of Poom this weekend. So I think their best player this weekend was probably Poom, although Luger was close behind, and he was the one obviously doing the damage, so he's going to stand out more than others. But I thought Poom looked really, really good.
Yeah, AP Kaisa is like kind of like this new meta pick that is really popping up. We saw a lot of it ADC this weekend. Nobody played it mid. I don't recall. Not a single mid pick, and that was Baker played it mid earlier
Yeah.
this week, and he'd been playing it in solo queue, and that's why this pick was like being so talked about. But even like the AP version of it in bot lane, like you could see in these CLG games, like even to tanks like Licorice, who was playing full tank Scion, like it was dealing damage. Like once you finish that Manamune transformation and you have like Manamune Ludens, similar to Corki, like this champion just like hits like a truck. And
Hmm.
especially if you can continue to chain the W's together, because you get like almost, I think it's a 75% cooldown reduction on
Yeah, Freak
Evolve
was talking
W.
about it on cast.
Yeah, when you hit it, it's like a 75% reduced cooldown. You can like just chain them together, and you could see that like Licorice over like a 15-second period, it went from like 4k HP to like 1k HP. Had to base TP. They had to give up that drag for Ocean Soul, and the game was pretty much over from there. Um, but just
I got a
solid
question
game.
for you. When we were watching that, I forgot to ask you, did you think Licorice was eating them to block them, or was he just not dodging? Like, I couldn't make up my mind. I'm
I
like,
think it was a bit
oh,
of
he's
both.
just trying to block for the team. And I'm like, I don't know if he's blocked. He doesn't really look like he's moving into them. It looks like he's just getting hit by these things. And I kept going back and forth. I'm like, is he griefing or is he just being a frontline?
I think it was
Not
a bit of
sure.
both because sometimes
This frontline's dying if you take like 10 Kaisa W's.
in some like situations you could tell like when he was standing near people, like he would purposely walk into it just to make sure that his other teammates weren't getting hit by them, because like you would much rather your Scion lose 400 HP than your mid or your ADC lose 700
Mhm.
HP.
And it's way easier for us watching, right? Because he's standing behind the wall and firing them from behind the wall. So we see the W coming out way before they do. So it looks like, oh, you should be able to dodge that. It's not quite that simple, even though I still think you should probably try to dodge those because, like you said, the cooldown matters. If he just keeps firing those things out, you don't got no tank anymore. But I'll let that go for the time being, anyways. And the other thing that I'll add with the whole Kaisa thing is they played it with the TF. I don't know, was that both games or was it just the one that he played
No, just
TF
the
with?
first game.
That's another point and click CC, right? With the gold card. Who else did Palafox play?
He played Ari the second game.
Ari, okay. A little bit less. Well, I guess Ari's still pretty reliable CC with the. I always forget the active man. What the hell's that item
Everfrost.
called? In the Everfrost and the Charm. It's always pretty reliable to get the CC with that as well. So to chain that stuff up together, and then obviously you have Kaisa use Killer Instinct, come in and one shot someone. So pretty good combo out of them. It seems like they kind of went back to like the old CLG a little bit that we saw last year at the start of Summer Split, which is like the just go in, CC someone, and have everyone dogpile. I don't mind it. If it gets you wins, do it. I know people called it Bronzodia last year. I don't give a shit. If you have a comp that's working for you and it's hell aggro, play it. If you get to choose when you fight, that's a good thing. Use those go buttons. Draft that stuff. So good for them. Happy for CLG because I mean this is a team that definitely was struggling. 2-0's huge for them.
Mm-hmm. Next up, the other team who was on the losing end of that game against CLG and unfortunately went 0-2 this week, Golden Guardians, whom CLG is now tied 7th place, 5-8. Blue Jay, you kind of had this team as like the third best team in the league not too long ago. Like, what the hell? What's going on, dude?
Come on, you could give me a little bit more. Are you gonna be a little bit more fair to me, or no? Do I have to defend myself here?
Oh, well, just you're gonna say that like you were hesitant and you could have put them 5 as well or stuff like
Yeah.
that. No, I know, I
Although,
know.
although I had them 3, I did not say that they were playing like a third place team. However, this team is on my shit list. I still love them, but fuck, I'm getting angry watching these games, man. Not because they're losing. Losing happens, but because they're just playing like dog shit or they're throwing 11k leads, man. Licorice, bro, what are you walking up for? Licorice finally had a game where I was like, he's actually popping off. He got the Gnar into the Scion, and he's like 40 CS lead at 9-10 minutes, whatever it was, maybe 50. I can't remember exactly, but he's absolutely smashing the lane. And he's actually he jumps on FBI, he one shots him, and I'm like, let's go, man. We're finally seeing Licorice pop off. And then of course he got picked off a million times and ended up, kind of throwing the game there. We saw once who was the team that they were playing against when Pride Stalker was just like, oh fuck it, I'm going in on Nocturne at the end of the game. Who was that? Was
That
that
was 100 Thieves still. That was that
that was
game.
100 Thieves?
Mhm.
That game, I don't know. For me, I looked at that. My initial instinct was like he thinks that they're just gonna lose because they're down a man, so like he doesn't want to play around the drag. He's trying to pick off the AD carry. I don't know if that's still the play though. Like it's hard. You either have to go for the steal or you have to go for a player. Eh, I don't know. I kind of have a hard time with that one, but it definitely looked pretty inty, and they ended up losing the game off that. I wasn't sure if that was I'm tilted and I'm going in, or if it's like we can't win a drag fight. I need to find some sort of pick and do something. But it definitely didn't look too good.
Yeah, the whole it felt kind of apparent that he wasn't too practiced on the Nocturne. I've been playing a lot of Nocturne myself recently,
Oh, you have some
and
tips for Pride Stalker?
it's not even just some tips. Like you could kind of just tell, like he wasn't always like pulling the trigger, and he was doing like, I mean, he was just doing some weird things. Like he wasn't
But
really
the
like
thing is, though,
he wasn't fearing people like properly. Like he wasn't really using like flash fear as like a tool in team fights too much. Like he would ult onto somebody and he would put the fear on top of them and then just like either not walk behind them or not flash in response, because there's like a 0.5 second delay when the enemy flashes for you to continue to flash, and your tether will still like connect. Like the tether will stay even though the indicator will show it out of range. Like you can flash like right after to keep the fear going. It was just a weird game. Like, dude, the biggest thing for me in that game against 100 Thieves is like I don't know what the fuck Lost is doing on Kai'Sa that game. He built like Manamune into Nashor's Tooth
You mean
into
Zeri?
no, Lost was playing Kai'Sa
Lost was on Kaisa? I thought.
against 100 Thieves.
Oh, against 100 Thieves. Okay, sorry. I had CLG. I was like, what's his face was on Kaisa? Uh, Luger. Sorry. Go ahead.
But he just his build was just complete dog shit. Like I don't even know what I was witnessing. Like you couldn't tell if he was going AP Kai'Sa or AD Kai'Sa, and he kind of just ended up dealing like it was just like the low end of damage for both versions. Like his W's didn't hurt that much, but they didn't really end up like poking a lot. They kind of just ended up hard engaging for like the last 20 minutes of the game and continually failed their engages. And like Lost just wasn't even doing that much damage in the standard team fights anyway. So it just felt like Golden Guardians couldn't really decide what to do. And, we've talked about it in the past, them sort of having a problem of like closing out games and knowing what to do in these situations. And it was just like Lost was trying to like build for both situations. Like it was like, oh, I'll have some AP, so my W's also hurt, but then I'll also have AD because I got to kill the Scion. But then it just ended up like, now I'm like, I have the worst of both worlds here.
Yeah, there was a lot that stood out to me in that 100 Thieves throw. Like I mentioned, Licorice just walking up in base all by himself and just getting randomly picked off. But then the other thing that I noticed, and I've mentioned this before a while ago, when you have a huge lead, you will see teams like C9 or TLs. C9 especially has always been good at this. I talk about it all the time. How they push Vision very, very deep when they have the lead, and then go on Baron because obviously it takes longer to face check all these different brushes the deeper you have the vision. The northern quadrant of the jungle above Baron there, they don't like when they start up Baron and they kind of throw at Baron, they don't clear out almost any of that. They have a ward over the pit, and that's basically it. They have a couple of wards down, but they don't go deep at all to get deep vision in the jungle. And that's something that could really hurt you because obviously it doesn't take much longer for 100 Thieves to get in if there's less pink wards that they're walking through, if they're getting poked at from different angles, and blah, 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 blah. That is something that I'm like, dude, why? What is the rush to start up this Baron when you're 11k ahead? If you set up your vision properly, the other team will not have a good time face checking you and will get poked out or will have to blow summoners or whatever it may be. But it seems like they just walked in so easily up to the Baron, and then the team fight went 1-for-1, and that was just another thing that delayed the game. Really, really unbelievable how hard of a time this team is having closing out games with such significant lead. And even though in the past I've given them like passes like, yeah, they'll get better at it. Well, when? Like, oh my god, when, man? There's so many throws from this team. Them and Immortals. I don't know who to rely on more to throw a game.
Yeah, they they got 3 Barons and lost the game. So that's
Ugh,
just a bit
yikes,
sad.
man.
And it just like it got in it just the other thing that was really bad was you could sort of tell you could see their sort of indecision like their what's the word? Like they weren't being decisive in the games. And when they constantly had these like back and forths, whether it was towards Baron or whether it was towards mid lane, like people will like see the clip on Twitter of like talking about how like nobody touched the side lane in that game for like almost 10 minutes where like like people joke about like the NA ram like they were literally A ramming that game like nobody even went to a side lane and
Yeah, true.
like
That was all
but
over Twitter.
but part of it like the big result from that like people weren't really talking about was since Golden Guardians was just so often posturing towards Baron because like you said like they weren't setting up their Baron vision properly so they didn't really know when they could start it and when they actually did ended up starting it a few times like it would end up like they would have to either back off because 100 Thieves is like walking in or they would just like take some shit fight and it would just be a 1-for-1 and sell the game out like they couldn't close like Dragon Soul and when you're like 10k up like usually Elder is a tool that should be at your disposal to help you end the game because you have this huge lead but 100 Thieves was consistently just like taking a drag then like okay Baron would happen and then like 100 Thieves just like randomly gets the drag afterwards now and they never had Elder at their disposal to sort of win the game and if you're a bad team like that's definitely something that can easily allow you to end the game but they were screwing up their dragon timings and like that also was like a big problem with why they couldn't end the game because they didn't have like
Yeah.
this huge impact soul like an infernal or a mountain or a hextech like it was cloud so they probably were just like we don't give a fuck like we'll just pressure baron and then win the game and then it's like we don't really know what we're doing now and now we don't have like a dragon soul like win con and even if we did it's a shit soul so now we don't have elder so gg.
I'm gonna continue to look like an idiot, and I'll just keep saying it. I don't think this team is as bad as their record. I know this is just as I say it, I just get the feeling they're just gonna go 0-2 again next week and just get worse and worse and worse. I just don't think they're that bad, but somehow they find ways to lose games. Last thing I'll say is Olive is being disrespectful again and blowing hourglass every 2 seconds in places he should not be. And he needs to be better. That's literally it. He needs to be better. Like, you can't be getting picked off as much as Olive is getting picked off in bad spots.
That
He's just
reminded
wasting
me.
his stopwatch or hourglass every 2 seconds and dying.
That reminded me. Another shit tier Tank Rise game. So just to add
Mm,
on to add to the count.
very good. Tank Rise bad for J&T. You don't like it.
Yep.
All right. Immortals now?
Yep. Um
Now we can
to
get into the
me,
flaming Immortals part.
to me, I mean, they're the new CLG dog. Like this team fucking sucks. Like they
Every
suck.
team's the new CLG all the time, eh? That's always the top. Any team that's like towards the bottom of the standings, it's like, are they the new CLG? What about TSM? They're not?
Well, TSM's they're just TSM now. Like they're the 10th place team. Like
Gotcha. So they've assumed the
that's their
CLG
title.
thing and that it's
Yeah.
their own. Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's so ingrained in TSM now. So next year it'll be like, who's the new TSM? Is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Gotcha. So this is just by coincidence that someone in the Discord was just asking us our thoughts on Revenge, and I purposefully held back some of my thoughts because I mentioned to JNT as we were watching the games this weekend that I'm giving bean soup to Revenge already. So I didn't. I know that JNT knows I was going to say this regardless. But shout out to Ragyo that was in the Discord mentioning some of this as well. I thought Revenge probably had the worst performance this weekend. He was absolute trash tier. Now, you mentioned earlier, JNT, the game where he TPs down, he gets 2 kills, and then he could go lane against the Narc. To me, if you're playing Aurelia and you got 2 kills at 4 minutes and you're laning against Gnar, shit on that guy, man. That is already a good matchup for you. And then you get 2 kills with a TP and do nothing with it. He was down like 10 CS because of the TP play, or maybe 20 or whatever, and he turned it into like, I don't even know if it was a plus 10 CSD by the end of the game. Like, he did nothing with it. He whiffed so many ultis. He, after whiffing abilities, continued to try to engage. I think who was the, this will come to me. Was it? It was Blue. It was Blue that was on the Corki. He tries to engage on Corki after whiffing everything on Blue, and he still goes in and dies after that. Holy shit! What a bad weekend for Revenge. And even like his first of all, he got absolutely shit on by Summit, which, I mean, that happens to everyone, sure, but he still played awful. And then he tweeted out like, "I'll be better tomorrow" or whatever, and he just wasn't. Man, this was an awful, awful weekend for Revenge. Uh, yeah, I think my rant is over. That was yikes.
Yeah, really bad. Once again, I towards the beginning of the season, you know, what we Revenge had been looking a little bit better because we really hadn't like been seeing him like int. Like he hasn't been inting. That was giving me like a little bit of confidence that we might be seeing this player improve a little bit. But he inted it up against Summit and Cloud9. Like, can we really blame him for it? Because Summit is that good, and he is that good, but he still got like absolutely destroyed. Like not even close. Like he got put in the dirt harder probably than Summit did to both Fake Out and Kumo, and that is
He
saying
walked
something.
up into turret range level 3, which is like, dude, of course you're gonna. I mean, he ended up not dying there miraculously. He should have died on
He
that
lived
one,
with like 14 HP or something, I
but he
think it
had to
was.
use sums and barely gets out, and the lane was just done from there. And it was like, oh my god, level 3, you took a turret shot. Like, how many times have I seen this before in like fucking platinum solo queue?
Dude, but it's just
Ugh.
inconsistency. Like he's so
Yeah.
inconsistent. Like he'll have for every one good game is 3 horrible games.
Which is, honestly, you could argue more consistency than inconsistency. If you're
I see what you're
you're
going
inting
for. I see what you're going for there, but he's just
Your
bad,
inting
dude.
fairly often is pretty consistent. Good for him, consistent player. Look, I do cheer for Revenge. I like the guy, but he's just not good right now. Let's be blunt and let's be honest about it. I'm sure he would say the same thing because I know he was not happy with his performance this weekend, and that was pretty much it. The one guy that I did think actually looked pretty good against Cloud9 was PoE. Didn't really matter all that much because they're Cloud9 and they pretty much outplayed them everywhere else. PoE looked good on the Ari. He had a lot of nice charms. Even Xerxes actually looked pretty good on Lee Sin as well. But I thought even though Xerxes was getting all the kills, PoE was setting up most of them. So a pretty good weekend out of PoE. But the team is too heavy for this mid jungle to carry them at the moment. Destiny's pretty trash too, honestly.
Yeah. And like I don't even want to like go too deep into the rabbit hole about this set jungle pick because like I don't even know like what I was seeing. Like I was there. I was watching the draft for this game, and like the end of the draft was happening. I was like, I wasn't really paying attention. And then I went to the bathroom and I came back and I sat down and like it was maybe a minute into the game. And like, you know, I'm just looking at the game and then all of a sudden they pan to Xerxes in the jungle. And I'm like, is that set? And I was like, why is there a set in this game? And then I took a look closer. I was like, that's Xerxes. And I was like, what's going on? They're playing set jungle? Like, you're telling me in season 12 we're playing set jungle in the LCS? It's like, dude, like it's fucking season 10 all over again. Like, get me out of here, dude. If you listen to this podcast for a long time, back into the old days, like I had a huge hate boner for set jungle because it's a fucking dog shit pick, and
I remember.
we somehow are like seeing it again. Like I don't even know. I'm losing even more faith in Immortals just because of that one pick.
Yeah. Last thing I'll talk about with how bad they were was specifically the game against Dig, where they go for that bot dive. Do you remember what I'm talking about? Where they lose 3,
Yeah. It was a
and
4 for 2, and they. Oh
yeah,
Lord.
it's a 4v2. You know the other team has no teleports, by the way. This is the freest thing. There's no one near, and you know it. You know they can't join. So you could either one, just wait for the wave to come and then dive, which they decided not to. They decided to dive before that, which is okay. But one of the problems with that was Destiny started tanking the thing before he even engaged. He like walked into turret range as Tom Kench and then W'd. So he ended up taking one more turret shot than he should have, and then died before he could even gray health, which gave Aphelios level 6. And then Aphelios had red and white and was able to ulti with that, which then he kind of popped off on that. That was such a grief by Destiny, man, and that could have given them the game. That could be where you win the game. Instead, it's where you give up the game, and they just lost it off of that play. Uh, yeah, Destiny has not looked very good this split either. So honestly, between Revenge and Destiny, obviously Revenge was worse this weekend. But as for the whole split, it's pretty close. Both of them have not been very good. And the other thing is, I don't have
I
much to
don't think
say on.
anybody is playing good on Immortals. I don't think a single player on Immortals is playing well.
I guess not well, but there's definitely like PoE and Xerxes are not nearly as bad as Destiny and Revenge. I don't think that's even close. So even if the team isn't necessarily playing well, you could definitely point to Revenge and Destiny in my eyes as to the reason why they are losing these games. And maybe you could point to PoE and Xerxes for saying they should get more advantages in other places. That I could maybe get behind, but those two are the big standouts to me. The other thing is, even though we don't have a lot of data on Arrow, I don't think it would make a difference whether it's him or Turtle. I think that it's kind of whatever. Like, I don't think either player has really done a whole lot. So you could put in Turtle, you could put Turtle back in. I don't think anything gets better.
Yeah, like like bot lane for Immortals just like doesn't feel like a priority in the early game at all. So I think even though Turtle is like he might have might have higher highs, but he'll have lower lows. Like it doesn't really matter too much because other than the one 4v2 play we saw out of Immortals this weekend, which ended up completely like they fell flat on their face and like kind of lost the game off of that. Like they don't really do anything that much in the bot lane anyway. Like it's all very mid jungle focused and like occasionally like they're going top to help out Revenge. Like but you'll see Power of Evil like if he's on the Ahri like he'll be like aggressive, with Xerxes in the enemy jungler try to make a pick or like we'll see Xerxes go top to cover for Revenge or like help him out all the time. But we never see them play towards bot side at all. And the one time they did, they fucking griefed it.
And just a couple of weeks ago, this team was starting to look good again. This team's been kind of a roller coaster as well as like, oh, okay, maybe they're starting to show some life and the bad again.
Well,
That's
fortunately
the way
for
it be.
Immortals, there is one team that is even fucking worse.
Yeah.
And that would be TSM.
I don't know where to start with TSM, man.
Well, I'll tell us where to start.
Please do.
Because this is the same sentiment that everybody has been saying on social media, at least this past weekend. What is TSM doing in the draft? Their drafting makes absolutely no sense at all. Like, legitimate no sense. Like, we talked about already their game against Dignitas, where they give up Dignitas' 3 best picks. But then, look at their game. Who was their second game against? EG? Yeah, they look at their next game against EG. They go first pick Lee Sin, giving up Hecarim Zeri over to EG, and then you give EG Nautilus on R3, which is like Zeri's best support pairing in the game, I would say. Either Leona or Nautilus. It,
Nautilus is much better than Leona in my opinion, just as a
um,
champion
I,
altogether. Not
I,
necessarily the pairing. I just mean
no,
Nautilus. I think is the better champion.
I agree, but they're giving up what I think most people would say is the best support in the league, unless you're playing Karma with like Ezreal Karma or you're playing Lux with Kate Lux. But like Nautilus is probably the best support in the game, and they give that up as well to pick like they pick both their solo laners on like B2, B3. So you gave up two OPs, and now you're blind picking your solo laners to get counter pick, and then you're picking like what did they even pick bot lane in response? Like it was just some dog shit. Like I don't even remember, but the drafting's
I
horrible.
remember Shenyi was on not or Alistar.
Oh man, his Alistar was
Was
rough.
that was the EG game or
Yeah,
what was that?
that was
Yeah, it was the EG game.
his
Yeah, because
Alistar was rough.
you know what I remember thinking as we were watching those games? Because at the start of the split when Shenyi was playing, I remember saying like he actually has a good eye for engages. They're just way too early all the time. Like he's
It
always
was the
engaging,
same
and
exact
there's
thing.
it was the same exact thing. I remember thinking, I'm like, damn man, we're seeing this again where it's like he's getting like 3-man pulls and no one is nearby, and I'm like, this guy just isn't on the same page as anybody else, or maybe he thinks his team has way more mobility than they do. It's like you could probably count a lot of multi-man pulls for the Alistair, but it doesn't matter if there's no damage following it up, and he's just dying. And it's like, well, okay. The other thing too is Spica again. I can't believe this is something that happens this often to a jungler. Face checking. Again this weekend, he's just dying to face checking, especially when you're face checking Baron and the Alistar is right beside you. If you're going to have someone face check, let it not be the jungler. Let it be someone who can actually. That like you could be the Alistar, it could be a blue trinket, it could be an Ezreal. There's lots of tools generally to check a Baron. I mean, it depends on your draft, of course. There's usually a lot of tools, and Spica's just like, I'll check, and then dies. And it's like, as soon as you give up, like as the jungler, you can't afford to die like that. You're just giving up the objective at that point because the other team's going to quote unquote flip it, but it's not a flip anymore because the enemy jungler isn't there. So you're like, you're not really afraid of it getting stolen. You're just giving away free objectives. Like Spica, you should know this as the jungler. You can't die like that. Let someone else check. Find a different way to check Baron. No matter, even if there's no good way to check it, that is the worst way. Ugh. Come on, Spica. Come on, man.
Yeah. Because not having a good split, Tactical's not having a good split. The LDL experiments of Kaido and Shenyi aren't looking too hot either. I think Takeover, like he's all right. I mean, it's
Takeover, whatever, man. I don't like
yeah,
him
like
at all. Right? It was a dumpster fire, and then he's thrown into it. I don't care if he runs it down. It's whatever. He's kind of getting a free pass because of how shit this team was already. You can't look any worse. So maybe even if Takeover is looking like absolute dog shit, it's like, well, I don't know any player who goes into this team and makes them look better when they're sprinting it pretty much everywhere except top.
yeah. I mean, while TSM isn't technically like mathematically eliminated from playoffs, it just feels like a ticking time bomb in terms of when we get the social media posts of "Thank you, insert X player."
And thank you, ex-coach.
Probably as well, yeah.
I think Chowie's gone too. We'll see. We'll see. I don't have anything other than a hunch. Just saying that. I mean, the hunch is. I mean, is it a hunch if they're like 2-9 or whatever the hell they are?
They're 2-11 right now.
2-11. Yeah, 2-9 was before going into the weekend. Yeah,
That is so
yeah.
bad, man. Like 2-11.
It's more than a hunch, right? Like coaches get fired for that shit, especially when you paid $5 million. Is the rumor for the roster
Oh,
that
that's
we heard on
such a fucking meme.
that was the rumor we heard on Hotline League last week or 2 weeks ago or whenever the hell it was.
TSM
Um,
has spent in the last year and a half. They spent $10 million on their this year's roster and Sword Art.
That's a lot of money
Or
to
11,
spend
I
for
guess,
10th
'cause
place. Like
yeah.
last year, they at least finished first, and right, they finished first in summer.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, like that's okay. You didn't make worlds, which does like that's still bad for spending that much money and not making worlds. But at least you didn't get shit on all year. This is like $5 million for 10th place. That is amazing. That is amazing, right?
Yeah, because I mean, I think it's a fair assumption to say that the only teams that are spending more money are Cloud9, TL, 100 Thieves, and EG.
Yikes. Okay, like
And
so here's
honestly,
the thing.
EG might not even be spending that much because they probably have JoJo and Danny on like cheap contracts.
So I wanted to do. I'm going to call an audible on the topics here if this is okay, JT, because this obviously we're talking about TSM right now. I think this fits right into the other topic, we wanted to talk this week about the most over and underrated player in the LCS, and then maybe give a few honorable mentions. This is where I'll get to the point that like I actually think it's tactical. And the reason being is that
Or
I did not
overrated?
think yeah, for overrated. I did not think tactical was particularly great last year, and I know a lot of people share that sentiment as well, but I think that it's easier like he played on Team Liquid, right? I'll remind people that you're playing with Team Liquid. Obviously, you're going to not stand out that bad, but he still stood out a lot. If I'll remind people about the Malphite memes and whatnot. And the reason why a lot of people would be like overrated, who thinks this guy's good? Well, a lot of people actually still. Last week when I talked on Hotline League about Jensen should be avoiding TSM, um, pretty much I don't remember who it was exactly, but Dash, Mark, and Travis were all the ones in the call, and they were pretty much saying like if Jensen joins TSM, he still has Spica and Tactical to play with, and these are known and Hooney, like these are known quantities, and I'm like, I don't think Tactical is as known as people think he is. I fully expected him to look much worse going from TL to TSM. I did not think this much worse, I will admit, but I definitely expected him to look worse because I did not think he was that great in the first place, and I think we're seeing a lot of that show in TSM. What do you think, JNT? Is he overrated? Am I
Oh, I
crazy? Do
mean,
you think?
I definitely agree. I think other than like Tactical has had like the games where Tactical has had a good performance, whether they've won or almost won the game, it was when he was playing like he's playing Uberfed Jinx with a Lulu top lane, and the other game was like the game against Immortals where like they hardcore through, and he was also playing Jinx on that game. Like he hasn't had a good other than the games where he's gotten mega fed. Like he hasn't had a single good game this year, like not a single
Yeah,
one. And I mean, I'm on the same page where I thought he was going to be worse because he was moving from TL to TSM and he was playing with Core DJ and he was playing with this like insanely talented roster. Like I never like for once thought that he was going to move over to TSM and be like a top 80s carry in the league. Like, dude, like there's a lot of firepower on that TL team, especially playing with Core JJ. Like there is going to be like noticeable difference. Like
yeah,
it's very rare in the LCS that we see a player who was on a top team end up getting, kicked from the team for, a presumably better replacement and then go to a team below in the standings and then like play to that same level. Like it just doesn't happen. And it's because, in League, it's just so much easier to play well and look good when you have great teammates. And, you know, not to say that I expected Tactical to come into this year, and people should have expected him to be like a top 3 ADC in the league. Like I don't think like if people had those expectations, like I'm sorry, dude, but you just had like your expectations way too high. But
hmm
he has been quite bad for the argument to even still hold up. Well, like like he can still be good. Like I don't know, bro.
yeah. I'm not hanging on to that.
You're losing me here. Like week to
Yeah,
week, like it's getting like
and again, this always needs to be said to remind people that like when a team is playing bad, individual players are going to look bad as well. But to me, a lot of the reason the team looks bad is because he looks bad. And it's not just on him, but I'm just saying like this is not one of those scenarios for me where it's oh the team looks bad so he looks bad. I think it's he looks bad first and the team also looks bad as a result. Because sometimes you get the chicken or the egg kind of discussion there. And the other thing I'll say about this kind of thing as well is like a lot of times, and I mentioned this to you before, JT, these conversations around overrated or underrated players varies by person to person based off of like the voices you hear, right? I mentioned for me it was Hotline League last week when they were saying like if Jensen slots into this team, you still have X, Y, and Z or X, Y, and Z for Americans. Players and like that's where I was like, oh, they still think tactical's good. That is overrated for me. But people who don't hear that probably are like, where is this guy thinking? Like, why does Blue Jay think that like he's people think he's good? Well, that's where. But like if you listen to other sources, like your sources will kind of give you a different idea as to who is over or underrated, I guess is what I'm saying, which is kind of interesting about this kind of topic. But for you, J&T, I want to know who your choice was for overrated. Who do you think is the most overrated player in this league?
I had a couple choices, and
Okay.
I ended up landing on Inspired
That's a good
because,
choice actually.
excuse me, sorry.
Take your time.
Even though it does feel like he hasn't really been talked about too much in the last couple weeks, um, just kind of due to EG's like lackluster performances relative to what they were doing in lock-in, I still feel like people hold the sentiment like this guy is like an amazing jungler. And, not to say that he's not an amazing jungler, he just isn't playing like one right now. Like
Yeah.
in lock-in, yes, him and Vulcan were doing pretty much all of the heavy lifting for EG, and it feels like that's only really Vulcan right now. Like to me, Inspired is not playing very well. Apart from that Hecarim game on Sunday, there's not a game to me in like the last 3 or 4 weeks that stands out to be like, man, Inspired played really well that game. And that's the reason they won that game because for the most part, it feels like a lot of this team's successes are off the back of Jojo Pune and Danny still. And
Yeah.
on the same sentiment, like Jojo Pune and Jojo Pune specifically, like he's one of the players that's also kind of like letting EG down because of his over aggression in the early game. But like Inspired is just yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
honestly think that you could even say Jojo Pyun's a little bit overrated. However, with him, it's a little different. It's like, well, he's a new player. Like, you shouldn't really expect much out of him yet. And honestly, his growth could still come. So it's like, I wouldn't give him like he's definitely not the most overrated player in the league, but I could see a little bit overrated just because of all the hype that surrounds him. But I think you're really onto something with the inspired one because this is something I had thought of previously, but I completely forgot about him when doing this topic or when making my picks for this. I think you're absolutely right. And it's not because inspired is bad, it's that he was an LEC MVP. You would expect an LEC MVP to come in and stomp this league, and we haven't seen that. So I think that's a kind of fair on your side. Any other honorable mentions?
Um, I mean, I still think one. I mean, like Bjergsen was kind of there in my back pocket, but I mean,
Mm,
I kind of, I've slowly started to realize this more and more over the course of the season. And I even did sort of mention it at the beginning. Like, it's really hard to shine in the mid lane right now, just with the whole outlook of the meta. Like, mid lane is not a lane where you're picking aggressive champions. You're playing to win the lane. It's more of you're playing to wave clear. You're playing with your jungler. You're looking to dive. You're looking to control objectives. And Bjergsen was, I think, in everybody's mind, supposed to come in as the standalone best mid in the league. And I mean, I don't think that's the case. I think if I had to pick a mid laner who's, the best in the league right now in terms of who's showing it, dude, I think it might be Fudge. Like, I don't know. Like, he did have a bad Lucian game, but Fudge has been playing
the
really, really
mid
well
lane
these last
pool.
couple weeks. Like his Victor game against TL, in my opinion, like he was the best player in that game, performance wise, in that game specifically. Last week he had a really, really good week. I don't know, like, but once again, like I don't think that's to Bjergsen's fault because I do think that Bjergsen is playing a more supportive role for this TL roster because they have these very strong side lanes in Bwipo and Hansama. So
Yeah.
that was like
You hesitantly throw out the name Bjergsen because
yes,
we're not seeing Goat Bjergsen, but also it's kind of like well, we're not really supposed to when he's playing Zillion every other game or when he's playing
yes.
Corki or Galio. I hear you. I hear what you're saying. And to me, I'm just no, I don't think he's overrated because of that reason. But I do see why you're throwing out the only other name that I'll throw out is Spica because even though I do think there is a chance Spica can get back to his former self, there's people that are still saying Spica is one of the best players in league. I saw it in Hotline League chat tonight. Like, no, he's not, and it's not close. He's not one of the best players in the league. He's in fact he's been one of the worst, which is quite the difference from going from an MVP. Um, if he turns it around, will I be surprised? No, but let me put it this way: I'll be surprised if he does it with this iteration of TSM. If you get a new iteration of TSM, and I could see Spica starting to play a lot better. Whereas, like, I don't really see that being the case with Tactical, and that's why Tactical was my pick.
Yeah.
Now,
Well, I'll just a quick little
yeah,
add
finish.
on
Yeah, go
just to the
for it.
end. It's not like I feel like, you want to be able to give some credit to these other players on TSM who really, kind of aren't the problem. But the problem that I have with TSM specifically, and, Spica in this case specifically, is that, like, dude, CLG still isn't really playing that well overall. Like, Golden Guardian still isn't playing that well overall. Immortals is not playing well at all. And TSM is still worse than all of these teams. Like, it's not like
Yeah.
they're playing bad and everyone else is just playing much better. Like, there's a lot of these teams in the LCS that are having like, really up and down weeks, can't consistently stay good, and TSM is just always consistently bad. So,
Yeah, that's
like,
true. That's a fair point. Like, if you play against Immortals, that should be a winnable game. If you play against CLG, that should be a winnable game. And well, they're not winning those games. So yeah. I guess TSM did beat Immortals off of that huge throw,
I've
right?
just now
So
realized I've had the
yeah.
TSM logo up on the screen the whole time.
I mean, we've been talking about TSM most of the time anyways, but yeah. Okay, what about underrated? Underrated player. Do we have the same pick here? You know where I'm
Yeah, I
going with
mean, well,
this.
we talked about this already. Biofrost he's just a beast.
So there was a take on Hotline tonight where someone said Biofrost is gonna be the MVP, and you know how you could like react in the Discord? You could like I gave him like the clap emojis, not because I think he's the MVP. He's just not. Straight up, he's just not. But I'm happy there's someone out there realizing that Biofrost is being an absolute beast. Last week I listened to the dive and they were talking about River the whole time. And don't get me wrong, River is good. I love River. Like he's been their second best player in my mind. Biofrost has been an absolute monster. I mentioned it at the top of the show. No matter what he has played, he has been good on it. I cannot believe how wrong I was coming into the season where I thought Biofrost was going to be a liability. He's a monster. And to me, I think he's actually number 2 support right now behind Core JJ.
I hadn't really thought of that, but for the most part, I can't really argue with that. You know that.
The ones that you could put Winsome up against him, I'd still take Bio. I think Bio's been
I would
better.
actually go with Vulcan. I think.
I wouldn't say Vulcan. No, I definitely go with Bio over Vulcan.
Um, I was gonna say something. I forgot about it. Oh yes. I think part of the reason why I think Biofrost is getting slept on by most of the league is just because River has continued to be really, really good. Like, I came into the split personally having a lot of faith in River, so to me, it's no surprise that he's playing well, and he is like one of the most talked about players on this Dignitas team. But because he is this sort of, I don't want to say big name, but he is a bigger name in the LCS in relative to the rest of the players in NA. Biofrost is like flying under the radar. Like, his Lux is great, his Thresh is great. I think
Even
of
Tom
like,
Kench.
yeah, I
Tom
mean,
Kench.
everyone's playing Tom Kench, and Tom Kench has actually turned out to be a really good pick.
There's a lot of
Um,
supports that are just devour bots, and like, yeah, I guess you're playing Tom, but like he actually engages and makes nice plays on Tom
oh,
Kench as well.
yeah,
So
I just remember that, like, that fat W he hit on like the 4-man W where he jumped to the bush above
into the
the red buff.
brush,
Yeah, that was really good. Yeah, he's just playing
what
really
a
well.
waste. It's also nice because I'm a big Biofrost fan, so that's also nice to see. That's why I get so fired up talking about Biofrost. He's a beast, and I love it. Any other honorable mentions?
Well, I was gonna, regardless of this, ranking supports, I was throwing Vulcan in there for honorable
Mm,
mention because EG just in general, I feel like isn't as much. They haven't been talked about a lot because of their lackluster performance. But I still think like Vulcan is the main reason why this team looks good in their wins. I think he's really good. Like, despite being on like not the best team record wise currently, they're what 6-7 right now. I think
I
Vulcan's really good.
definitely think he had a good weekend. Maybe I'll have to pay more attention to Vulcan because maybe I'm one of the reasons why he's underrated because I'm not recognizing the things that you are seeing perhaps with Vulcan specifically. I think he's been good this year. For me it's no doubt Biofrost ahead of him, and I would also take Biofrost ahead of Winsome, even though Winsome started to
Oh
look
yeah,
really
I
good
mean,
as well.
I would take Core JJ. Like, I wouldn't take Winsome. Probably like
But here's the thing though. So
at the very best, he's top 4.
the thing is, I don't know how to put Core JJ for like all pro voting because he hasn't been there the whole time. And so like maybe there's a world where Biofrost is number 1 all pro because Core JJ missed how many weeks, right? Just for me specifically. I know a lot of people I feel like that's probably a hot take and a lot of people might think I'm crazy. I'm telling you, man, watch these games. Biofrost is a monster. If you think I'm crazy, just watch him. Just watch him. But yeah, that would mean Bio would probably be my number 1 all pro at the moment because how many weeks has Core JJ played? 2?
Um,
2 or 3?
wow, maybe it's only 2.
Right? Less than half. If we've done 6 weeks already, it's either half or
So
less than half.
he played this week. That's 2 games. He didn't play last week, right? Or was that
Mhm.
no? Or was that he didn't play the Super Week?
Oh shit, I don't remember. I'm specifically talking about weekends though. He's played 2 weekends, I think.
Might be 3. No, it's definitely 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
So
3.
then half then. Half of the weekends then.
I mean, he's still looking really good though. So I mean,
Yeah.
like if you told me like the season ends right now, I think I'm a little bit more in your boat because Core JJ's only played half the number of games that Bio has.
It's hard
But
when someone's missed so many games, right? But he's
like,
also been such a
yeah,
monster.
like
So it's
we
like,
still got
well,
another 5 games to go. So like
yeah.
the games played will even out.
Okay. J&T's giving me the hold your horses on this one. All right.
Hey man, Biofrost could keep popping off, dude.
Yeah, he could. Definitely could. All right, let's get to the playoff picture. We wanted to talk playoff picture predictions, if you will.
Yeah, so right now, the season were to end at this very moment. The
Mm-hmm.
playoff seeding would be as follows: Cloud9 1, TL2, 100 Thieves 3, Dig 4, tied with FlyQuest and standings at 7 and 6. I believe they still need to play each other.
One
Um,
more time.
yeah, so the head-to-head would decide
Didn't
that.
Dig
Should
just
they?
play Fly last week? It's a second round robin. I don't think they play each other anymore.
You mean did they
Dig and Fly played last week. Yeah.
last
Wait,
week
am
or
I
the
making
week
this up now?
before? You mean just
Last
like
week.
2 days ago or like 9 days
No,
ago?
like 9 days ago.
Maybe.
Oh, my memory's so shit, man.
You got me all confused now. Either way, they're tied 7 and 6, and EG alone in sixth place at 6 and 7. Although CLG and Golden Guardians, they're tied for seventh, not too far behind. One went out at 5 and 8.
Okay.
So,
Give me your 1 through 6, right? That's what we're doing here?
if I was a betting man, and I
Uh-huh.
had to say what my 1 through 6 would be, it would be as follows:
Okay.
Cloud9 1, TL2, 100
Yeah.
Thieves 3, Dig 4,
Okay.
EG5, and FlyQuest 6.
Oh, that's not even much different, man. The only thing I have switched is EG and Dig.
Well, here's the thing. I said this last week, and I think it stands true. I think I'm low key becoming a bit of a CLG fan.
Uh-huh. So what
And
does that have
well,
to do with anything? Because they're not there.
but dude, they all they got to do, like, okay, they play Cloud9 and TL next week, and they are most likely going to lose those games. But
Uh-huh.
if they could beat 100 Thieves, they have a real shot of making it in.
Like, oh, just win, forehead. Like, don't get me wrong, 100 Thieves is looking worse than we expected, and CLG is looking better than we expected, but like that's still a 100 Thieves pretty heavily favored game, isn't it?
I mean, it should be, but like one win, if like they got a lot of like I was looking at all the games and who's playing each other. Like CLG's got a lot of situations where if they go 3 and 2, like they're gonna make it.
Shout out Lamau LP in the live chat saying swap 1 and 2. So he's got TL number 1 still. If you got any I don't know if you're memeing Lamau LP, but if you got a reason, I'd like to see what it is in the live chat. Maybe we'll share that with people. Yeah, look, I mean, I gotta go C9 because I think one, they have 3 MVP candidates to the 2 on Team Liquid of Core JJ, I guess, and Whippo. And then I mean, they obviously just beat them. There's that. And then after that, there's obviously a steep drop off from TL to everyone else. I can say with pretty good confidence now that there is like a top 2 tier. I think that's no hot take. Most people would agree with that. The 100 Thieves one is this kind of feels similar to the Golden Guardians thing that I said.
They're third, but you don't have
Was
confidence in
that
them.
yeah, it's like I don't think they're playing like a third best team right now, but someone's got to finish third, you know? Like and the thing that I hate about my like playoff picture predictions is that like this is kind of how it's supposed to look. The only thing is TSM should be in there and obviously we know that like from expectations of the start of the year or like the top 5 of the spenders are all up there with C9 TL 100 Ds EG. The only team that's missing is TSM and that's like the only thing that's like not going according to plan. And then just one of the other random soup teams makes it, I guess in this case too, being Dig and Fly. So like I kind of feel like, eh. I guess I have Dig in there because obviously I think River and Bio are beastly, and then FlyQuest. I guess I gave them 6 just because they started off 7 and 4. Not even because I think they're much better than the other teams. They just started off with a better record, even if they weren't playing necessarily like a 7 and 4 team.
Yeah, dude,
So
FlyQuest was 5 and 1 at one point.
I know.
They're 2 and 5 in their last 7. That's
Dude, and they
not.
lost to CLG, man. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm happy for CLG and all, but like, that's a pretty big swing. The 5 and 1 to losing to CLG. Like, whoa, man,
Yeah, yeah.
whoa.
I
What
don't know.
what gives you the faith that they're gonna hang on to their playoff spot? Because now what? They're 7-6 now.
Well, they have. I think they have. I mean, I looked at. They have some easy games coming up, or easy games in my opinion. Like, or like they're not looking the greatest, but like they still have to play Immortals, and they still also have to play Golden Guardians. So I think if they win 2 games, they're pretty much in. With 9 wins, so they kind of right now they do have a bit of the luxury of getting those earlier wins in the season.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think a team like CLG is at a bit of a disadvantage because of how bad they started. Because I think if you were to play like add more games onto the end of the season, I think it's more likely that CLG is making it than a FlyQuest.
Interesting. You really have a lot of faith in CLG after this weekend.
Okay. I think it's just more that I think FlyQuest is really bad right now. Like dude,
Okay.
they're 2-5 in their
No,
last
they
in their
are bad
like
right now. They are pretty, yeah. And no, I get where you're coming from. Um, I don't think that they're worse than
dude.
CLG,
Maybe
but
CLG beats C9 again.
every
You know what I'm
time,
saying? Like,
dude, every time I have a take about how bad CLG is, they're just like, "Oh, haha, Blue Jay, we're a little bit better than you thought we were." And I'm like, "Okay, well, cool, I guess."
mhm.
I don't know. I don't think CLG's that good still. I feel like such a dickhead because they get this 2-0 weekend, and my only thoughts are, wow, Johnson inted it, and wow, Lost inted it. And like, I'm like, damn, like, can I not just give them credit? I want to give them credit,
Yeah,
but the
dude.
other team's giving them the fucking game.
Luger and Poon popped off, dude. Just say that instead. It'll
I
make you
don't
feel
want to
better.
be the hater. I don't. I am happy for CLG. Like these players, like it is huge for them to get a 2-0. Are they good? Nah. Sorry, man. Someone in the live chat, Lamau LP says, "Have you come full circle to being a CLG denier, Blue Jay?" I am a CLG denier. I do not think they are for real. But that does not make me a CLG hater, though. I will say that. I mean, how can you hate on CLG, right? They're literally not supposed to win anything. Their players are probably getting paid nothing. But
Yeah.
one last thing is the reason why I put EG up there, because some people be like, well, what about EG? Why do you have them fourth? I thought it was a good sign that Jojo Pyun looked good this weekend. I think Danny still continues to look good in team fights. We know that's his strength. I don't think their laning phase has been that weak outside of getting smashed by TL. So I think mostly things are looking pretty up for EG. Um, I don't think they've been looking great either. Kind of like 100 Thieves. Like I feel like neither of those teams deserve to be 3 and 4. But I do think they're the most likely team to push up there with 100 Thieves into the three,
That's
four
why I had
spots.
him as
So,
5. Because
so
Diggs popping off, dude.
yeah, I mean, Dig looks pretty good too. So I could see that anyways. I could see it going either way, but my pick is EG.
Well,
Okay, let's
let's.
get game predictions. Do they play each other this weekend? Is the question.
Yeah, they do actually.
Oh, do they really?
Yep, Saturday.
Hmm.
But first match on Saturday, Immortals versus 100 Thieves. Yeah, I think if I was picking right now, I would say that Immortals is, apart from TSM, the worst team in the league. So I have to go 100
Hmm.
Thieves.
100 Thieves for me.
Next up, TL versus CLG. As
Oh,
much as
do
I'll
it,
be,
J&T.
well,
Come
as
on, man. Take the bait, buddy.
well, I mean, I can't pick them, but I will be rooting for them.
Okay.
GL though.
Team Liquid.
Next up, Cloud9 versus TSM. I mean, Cloud9, like, what, even if TSM once again goes up like 9-0 in kills with the funnel strat, like, they're probably still just not going to play well, so.
Okay, I have this theory, guys. The thing is, this was more so last week more than what you were saying just now. I think JNT's afraid of TSM no matter what their record is. Last week he was saying like, do you remember what you were saying when they were playing
Okay,
EG or something? You were
okay, here's
saying
the
like, I
thing.
can see the thing where TSM comes up and wins this game, and it's like, out of all the teams, you think TSM is absolute dog shit, and you think like they're just the worst team in the league by far, and then you're like, but I wouldn't be surprised if they beat
Well, they're
XYZ.
not going to be Cloud9, so.
Okay. So
Well, the one,
you're not afraid of TSM on this one.
I mean, I'll be afraid for Immortals' sake when they play on Sunday, because, I mean,
Okay. All
but
right.
one thing I will say though, I thought that was funny because you would remember like TSM back in the day, like they're always like, when you were in game with them, like you always felt like the enemy team got nervous whenever like they got a lead or like the game was
Yeah.
even, and like now it's kind of the opposite where like they're complete dog shit, but it's also like the enemy team kind of gets nervous because like you can't lose to TSM, like surely you can't lose to TSM because they're this bad, like
Yeah.
um
Anyways, Cloud9, obviously.
yeah. Next up, EG versus Dignitas. Pretty important matchup in terms of playoff seeding going down the line.
I'm gonna go Evil Geniuses, mostly because I have them finishing ahead of Dignitas in my playoff prediction thing, so I have to have them there. Now you have Dignitas ahead of them, so J and T, are you taking Dig?
I am taking Dig.
Mm,
No, I like Dig right now. I like River. I'd rather have him over Inspired right now. Um,
that's fair.
I was about to say would I rather take Dig's bot lane over EG's Maybe if they get their preferred picks, I would. I hope to God.
That's a tough one. That is a
I
tough
I
one.
I hope to God that Fake God is put in a sleeper matchup with Impact, and he's not
Yeah.
playing against like it's not. He's not playing a colleague Gwen. He's not playing like Nar versus Camille. He's not playing like Tryndamere versus like X. I hope it's just like Ornn versus Gragas. Like that's what I hope the top lane matchup is for Fake God's sake. Because if there's one way that EG has like a guaranteed victory, it's playing through topside.
Yeah, I give the edge to Dignitas in jungle and in bot lane, but there's just a fucking massive hole in the top lane gap for me for impact over Fake God. And I mean, it would be great if Fake God shows up and pops off. We just don't really see it all that often, so I'm not counting on it. I think maybe that's why I'm going EG, I guess.
Okay, last up, Golden Guardians versus FlyQuest. I'll take FlyQuest, even though I'm not high on either of those teams at the moment.
Both of these teams are on my shit list right now for disappointing me. You're taking FlyQuest.
Yep.
I'm going Golden Guardian.
Okay. First
I
game
don't really know
Sunday,
why.
100 Thieves versus EG.
I will go 100 Thieves hesitantly.
Me too, also hesitantly.
Just top jungle for me. Not that impact is bad, but I think there's still the players for 100 Thieves are a little bit better. So 100 Thieves, I guess I'm hoping for them to pull it out. Then we got Dignitas versus Golden Guardians.
Give me Dignitas.
I will go Dignitas. FlyQuest versus TL. I think we're both going TL.
Yep.
CLG versus Cloud9. Do you have any faith in CLG here, J&T, to beat your boys?
Well, even I'm obviously picking Cloud9, but unfortunately I can't cheer for CLG in this game because they're playing Cloud9. So, like,
Cloud9
yeah.
for both of us, and then TSM Immortals. Now we're afraid of TSM all of a sudden because we
Well,
got another bad team in there.
I will continue to say every week until it happens. Like the script says, they got to pick up some wins somewhere, and like I'm taking TSM because
Are you actually? I was even thinking of taking TSM. Oh shit. Okay,
dude,
I'll stick with
Immortals
Immortals. I'll stick
Immortals
with
just
Immortals.
sucks balls, dude. Like I don't
They
know.
do, they do, they do, they do. But I don't think their mid and jungle is quite as bad as you think they do. So I'm going to show a little bit of faith in PoE to beat his old team. Because god damn it, they got to pick up some wins and they gotta get revenge. No pun intended for the last one for the throw. So Immortals and
Just like
revenge. This
a
is your time to pop off your 1-4 game. Was it him that was the running it down 3 games? Was that who we were talking about, or was that someone else?
said revenge and running it down, so I don't remember what else you said, but I agree.
Sounds
Yes.
sounds accurate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really shit
Immortals
last
for
game,
me.
by the way. Like Sunday, your last game, you're putting it 9th versus 10th place. Like
Let's not even talk about how bad viewership has been and will be for this weekend
it's
coming
gonna
up,
be
man.
like 55K views that game.
I'll say one quick thing on it, and then we'll just go right past it. I've never seen a week where the LCS did not crack 100K viewers on Twitch before, and I think that was Saturday that we saw it. The only time I saw it happen on Sunday was TLC9. There, I'm done. The viewership is in the trash. Cannot believe it. Let's go to quick news.
We got a fat quick news, so we'll go through it as quick as possible while still making it somewhat interesting. First up, the Champions Queue split number 1 finished up at the end of last week, last Monday. It just again reopened today. And Jojo Pune finished rank 1 and got the big money. I think it's 25K. So good for him.
I don't know how much it is, but that's pretty pog. It's a good sign when you see the new young rookie talent or whatever absolutely hard grinding and hitting rank 1 in what is obviously still very competitive league. Like even pros are saying like they were comparing it to Korean solo queue earlier when it first came out. Like that's a good sign that you're hitting rank 1 on this. So huge props to Jojo Pyun for grinding it out and hitting that. That's a very very good thing to see.
Yeah, and I mean, it's good that a player like him is the one who's winning the money and not like just a top player who we know is already good. Because like Jojo Pune's probably not getting paid anything, so
I couldn't tell you what the hell he's getting paid. So
I mean, probably not that much. Next
yeah.
up, this happened a little while ago, but I think is still pretty interesting. Baker had some choice words to say on his stream about Korean solo queue after yet again he was inted by top esports sub top laner. I think the guy went like 0-14 in the game. And
So I did see this, but can you give me a little refresher on what exactly Faker was saying? Like, what was he mad about specifically? He was mad about Chinese players inting his games, but did he say like what he's going to do about it? I feel like he did. I just don't remember.
well, he was basically saying how, I think this has been known for many, many years now, how Faker just constantly is getting inted in games because he's Faker. But in this specific case, it wasn't he was getting inted because he was Faker. It was just that, he just found it unacceptable that professional players are allowed to be invited to the server and given accounts who then go 0-14, and was basically just like putting a very strong stance out there that he will boycott solo queue. He did say this, that he would boycott Korean
Right.
solo queue if, Korea didn't address this and make some changes to it.
Yeah, this is coming back to me now, which makes sense because if these players are actually being invited over, like that's a privilege that you shouldn't abuse, and if they are abusing it, don't invite them over to the server. Ban those accounts. Honestly, inting should be banned regardless of who it is. Like, don't grief games. What year is it? I can't believe
2022.
this is still happening, man. Like, dude, I can't believe people don't have better things to do. I can't believe this is still happening in 2022. I guess that's something that's just going to happen for life.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing, and like, Faker's not really like a person to be joking about stuff. It just like,
Hmm.
to both like myself hearing it and also to like LS had like a big long conversation about this on his stream. you know, Baker potentially like boycotting solo queue is like a very big like power move in terms of like how that reflects on what, Korea is doing in terms of like what their solo queue is and everything. So that's a pretty strong stance he's going to take. Hopefully they make some changes, because if they don't make any changes and Faker actually were to go through with that, there could be some shaking going on over there.
Yeah. What else we got?
Next up, speaking of Faker, T1, they broke their LCK record of going undefeated to the start of season by winning against the Kwangdong Freaks. It was their first game. They just played Bro in their most recent series. They're 16-0 right now, but the previous record that they beat was 14-0. I believe that was in spring 2015 was when they originally set that record. That was the Marin, Bangy, Faker, Bang Wolf roster, OG roster. Won Worlds that year as well. T1 looked like absolute monsters. I mean, I've been watching a lot more LCK recently than I have been in the past, mainly because, T1 is just so good. And when you watch this team, like, they have the best player in every single role in the LCK. Like, the scary thing that people are talking about with this T1 roster is, like, Faker is back to being best mid in the league. Like, he is, like, right now, people will tell you, like, he's better than Showmaker, he's better than Chovy right now. And that's a scary
Interesting.
sight.
I haven't followed much LCK this year. I don't really know why. I guess maybe I do know why. Maybe it's because BDD's on a garbage team. Maybe that's why.
Yeah, unfortunately, my Hama Life boys, they're 10th place, although I do think, I mean, I won't go too far down the tangent, but like Karis and Somdi look decent. So they maybe got a
Mhm.
decent mid and AD carry going forward. The rest
I
of their
didn't know
team
you were
sucks
watching
balls.
LCK.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mainly just
Still
watching the
keeping up with
T1
Hanwha?
games. Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
I'll watch their highlights. Like, their fucking team
gotcha.
sucks. Like, Doo sucks, massive balls. Like, get that guy out of there. But Karis and Somdi look decent.
Okay, and next up, there was some behavioral system changes that are coming. Feed us what's going on there, Jinter.
Dude, there was a dev post that they put out like a few days ago, and it was basically just talking about how Riot basically admitted that they were wrong without admitting that they were wrong. Like, it was just a bunch of bullshit corporate speak in this like dev post they came out with, basically just saying how like, oh, our previous stance on the behavioral systems were, well, we don't think drastic changes are needed because these quote unquote toxic players make up only 5% of the player base. And then, in this post, they're like, well, oh, we've actually changed our stance on that, because it turns out the math actually shows that of those other 95% of players, they make up 82% of total reports. And like, bro, like, did you not do the math the first time? Like, 95% of your player base makes up 82% of the total reports that happen on your whole game. And you're telling me that you didn't give a fuck about that? Like, it actually sounds like they do care about that now, and they did, they gave some brief like, previews of some potential changes that they want to make, which is basically increasing the penalties on champion select bans and like actually like taking a deeper dive into post game reports and improving the technology to do that. And then also like rewarding like Honor 5 players, even though Honor 5 is a complete joke and has been ever since it came out. But
So I get that like maybe the wording I don't remember what the wording was. I did look at it really briefly, but even if the wording isn't the greatest as to like whether they're admitting they made a mistake or not, the fact that they're doing something makes me think they are admitting to the mistake, even if they may not word it the way you want it to. We'll
that's
have to wait
true.
and see. We'll have to wait and see what the outcome of it is first. You know what I'm saying? Like announcing changes is different than actually getting them implemented. But let's see where this goes first before we jump to conclusions, I guess is what I would say. And the other thing that I hope they do and that like I thought they would do like way when they first implemented like way back the whole honor system was like I thought the honor system was going to be about whether people are being assholes or nice people to play with, not about like oh you played good you get a GG. Like I thought it would be like oh this guy was an asshole so you know like asshole button hit the asshole button and then oh this guy was a nice guy hit the good guy button. Like I thought it was going to be something like that and they were like GG, the good shot calling and stayed cool. And I'm like, well, stayed cool is, I guess, one for behavioral. For me, I don't really care about reporting people for playing well. I don't give a shit. Everyone's trying their best. It's so cute. Like they're going to try. Uh, I don't really care about a GG award or
Dude, I just
whatever
like,
it's called.
why can't they just bring back like the honorable opponent thing? Like that's one thing that
Yeah, I
everyone
liked
has
that
always
too.
that's one thing everyone has always been talking about ever since they removed it. Is like, why did they remove that? Like that was actually a good indication. Like one, it allows the player who gives the award to like say like, oh yeah, like GG, this guy was an honorable opponent. And you also as that other player get that satisfaction of seeing that a person on the enemy team like honored you for being an honorable like opponent. Like it's good for both sides. Like I don't get why it's still not in the game. Like I would
I feel
rather
like that's
way
something
more
that
care about that than like getting like oh GG or like oh good shot calling. I was like no shit, I'm the jungler. Listen to me.
I feel like there's like a yearly Reddit post about bring back honorable, probably even more than annual. Honestly, it probably happens 2 or 3 times a year where you see the Reddit post
And
about bring back honorable opponent.
when
I've
it
seen
comes
it
to
a
the
few
new honor
times.
system, like all I can think of is that video that they came out with when they did like the stayed cool and like the good shot calling and the GG was like the thing they did with Yankos, Meteos, and Sneaky. Like that little ad that they
Oh
did
yeah,
for it. Like that's the only thing I can think of when I think about the honor system. Like I couldn't
was
give a
that the
fuck about it.
burrito thing? Was that
Yeah.
the
Uh huh.
dude? Man, I forgot about that. That was I liked that. That was pretty sweet. What else?
Next up, uh, Arcane. Hey guys, remember that?
Mm.
That was only like 4 months ago. I just
I know it
recently
feels like
rewatched it.
forever ago.
I know. I just recently rewatched it like a couple weeks ago. It's fucking good, man. Like
It's beat.
it's fucking so based.
They won a shit ton of awards.
Yeah, they won 9 Annie Awards, which are basically just awards for animations in cinema and television. Pretty cool. It was basically like Arcane and another show that basically won every single award. I'd never heard of the other show. It made me sort of want to watch it, considering it won all these other awards, so it's got to be a good show. But Arcane's still beast. Like, if you haven't seen Arcane, like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, go watch Arcane.
Okay, it's funny. Flower said something about that on broadcast this weekend too. Also, Cloud9 is adding Svenskeren as a sub jungle. Am I going too far if I say why? Like, it's not to replace Blabber. It did like I didn't see anything that was like, oh, we want like a coach or anything like that. Like I could see him being there as a coach. Maybe they need another scrim partner or something. Maybe there's something up with Malice, although I don't want to get too like that's speculation. We have no freaking idea. But the one thing that I will say is um, I'm pretty sure he still has the option to go to another team if another team wants him. But also, um, I don't really think there's another team that wants him. Like, for what you would have to pay for Svenskeren, there's not a lot of teams that I think could afford him. But also, I don't know if there's a lot of teams that need him.
Yeah, I would go with
Cloud9, no.
more.
Team
Yeah.
Liquid, no. 100 Thieves, no. EG, no. The list goes on. Just the answer is no, no, no. You don't replace Jose Dioto. You don't replace River. I
CLG,
doubt
maybe.
TSM's getting rid of Spica. I don't think CLG would spend for
They
Svenskeren.
probably
That's
won't, but
why.
I just mean, like,
That's why I
who would
think it's
improve
just
the
like
team?
that's why I think Svenskeren took this deal. I think he's looking at how the other junglers are doing in the league right now. And he's like, well, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought that sub players, and I say sub players, not academy players, because I would constitute a sub player as someone who's not playing on academy, but as a sub for the main roster, as more just like a positional coach. And Ben
I
Scaren's a
wonder that as
really
well.
experienced jungler, and you know, basically the way that I see it is Blabber is getting a positional coach, and for whatever reason, if Blabber gets COVID or if he's like sick and can't play, like Cloud9 has Sven Scaren to play for backup. And
Yeah.
I mean, not to say that Malice wouldn't be a good option, but Malice definitely does have a very different style of jungling than any other jungler in North America right now. Like even when you're watching him on Champions Queue, like he has a completely different style than every other player on the server. And I just think for consistency's sake, putting a person in like Sven Skaren also makes a lot more sense. Also, thank you, Lamal LP in the chat.
I was about to
They
ask
couldn't
that. I
they
was
couldn't
about to
play
ask that.
Malice anyway because he's EU. So
I was just about to ask that. So Lamau LP a step ahead of you and I. Thank you, Lamau LP in the live chat.
yeah.
Last.
Yeah, last pretty important actually. The LPL announced that they're switching back to playing remotely out of caution because of COVID-19. I think that was because I think it was in the post that they made, but also I don't know if it was not in the post, but a bunch of people on Team WE got COVID. And therefore they went back to playing like from their home arenas. If you don't even know what that means, the LPL teams have like their own home arenas. Um, and not mentioned in that post specifically, but the LCK this year has been like struggling a lot with COVID. Like, there's been a lot of teams in the LCK that have been getting fucked over by COVID. I know just this past week that Fred at Brion, like their whole challenger team had to be subbed in for the series against T1 because their whole team got COVID. And then even just today, I saw another post saying that like two of their challenger team players now also have COVID. So for their series this upcoming week, like they might have to find like emergency subs to play, or like maybe their whole challenger team has COVID and they can't even play. Like matches might have to get postponed. Like Nangshem had a bunch of big problems with COVID early on in the split. Gen G had some problems with COVID in the middle of the split. Like they're getting all fucked up.
There's been a lot of COVID issues when it comes to the East. My biggest problem with it is MSI is supposed to be in Korea, right? That's where I'm like, this can't be good, can it? I hope it doesn't change any of the plans, and I hope like everything's fine over there. It's just something that I didn't expect. You'll have to excuse my ignorance, but like things are getting a lot better over in North America with COVID. I guess I was a little bit ignorant to the fact that it might not be the case everywhere else in the world. So you kind of wonder what that means for MSI. If it maybe it means nothing. Maybe MSI goes on perfectly as planned. But it made me wonder anyway. Okay, JNT, we done?
I think so.
We are done. This has been episode 77 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. And thank you guys for joining us. And remember, as I always remind you at the end of every show, hit that subscribe button. We love you all. And we will be back next week, same time. Take care. Comb your hair. Goodbye.